Dennis Simopoulos is an icon of the planetarium profession. I had met Dennis in 1969, 1970, while I was running a planetarium in Lafayette, Louisiana. Dennis was, at that time, the director in Baton Rouge. Only a few years later, when I was in Nebraska and he was in Greece, I served on the IPS Council with Dennis for a number of years and saw all of the contributions that he made to that organization. In the spring of 2021, former IPS President David Weinrich and I got the idea of interviewing Dennis to record the history of his great contributions to the beginnings of the society. We set this up via Skype, and this is the resulting interview in video. Dennis not only served as the host of the meetings in Baton Rouge, which wrote the IPS bylaws, he also was a member of the council for so many years. Dennis was the conscience of the council. He always would keep them in line to stick to business. Dennis created a great deal of credibility for the new fledgling organization attempting to find its way in the world of professionals. His support of IPS as a European was a major factor in eventually allowing IPS to expand throughout Europe and throughout the world. In the course of doing this recording, I found that the Zoom recording did not record my own voice that well, and therefore I have cut out those segments. Dennis is, after all, the star. I do think this is an honest portrait of a person who has added so much to our profession.
For purposes of IPS history, archives were interviewing Jack Dunn, and I, Dave Weinrich, are today interviewing Dennis Simopoulos in Athens, Eugenides Foundation Planetarium, correct? Is that what you call the planetarium?
Yeah.
And Dennis has been around
for a long time.
They say you were old, but you've been around a while, and you know quite a bit of history about the International Planetarium Society, and you've been active in service to the International Planetarium Society, IPS, for many years. So I wanted to start by going back to your childhood or teenage years. When did you first, or how did you become interested in astronomy?
Well, it's a weird situation. I have not gotten interested in high school, although I used to be an Air Boy Scout. Boy Scout that is involved in air at the time, and of course later on in space. At the International Jamboree, as they called it, a special camping from all over the world in order to celebrate the 50 years of scouting in Greece. We had a camp near Delphi, where Apollo, of course, had his sanctuary.
Correct.
That time, next to our camp, to the camp I came from, that is the town I came from, Patras, there was very close to us the American representatives, some 40 Boy Scouts from the United States. And they had with them, of course, they were the best equipped camping in the lot. There were something like 3,500 scouts all over that camp. And they were the best equipped, of course, because they were coming from America. Among the other things that they had 3 little telescopes. I mean, thinking about them right now, they were no bigger or better than Galileo's telescope. Well, anyway, we never had seen anything like that in Greece. Even we hadn't even seen them in pictures. So we wanted to see how in the heck the sky looks through that magical tube. And of course, we were very shy. Our English was not, very advanced. But I wanted to go see the sky so badly that I took the opportunity to go ask them if we could use the telescope. And of course, they were very happy to show us how to do it. And that's the first time I saw through a telescope. That was the summer of 1960, about a year before Gagarin's flight.
All right.
Anyway,
What, 17 or 18 at the time?
how old I was? Let's see, 60. I was 17 years old. Anyway, they showed us how to turn the telescope on, to look at the sky, the galaxy, and of course it was amazing. I've never seen anything like that. And at that particular time, the moon was coming up from the side of the mountain. And of course, we turned it towards the moon. And boy, let me tell you, I thought I saw everything. I mean, the craters, the seas, just about anything you can imagine. And of course, what happened was that it hit me like a big bong on the head. I couldn't believe that the moon was like that, and I thought, although Gagarin had not flown, I thought that I was the first one who explored the moon through that little telescope. Later on, of course, I realized that 9 years later, 2 of our human beings will be walking on the surface of the moon.
Amazing.
9 years, which was even more amazing. And yet, that was not the item that got me involved in the planetarium. It was a very big surprise, very interesting situation, but that came later.
So let's one more before we leave the subject. So it became astronomy became a hobby then at age 17.
Well, I wouldn't call it a hobby. What I would call it, the Boy Scouts have badges. So I got to get as many badges about astronomy and space as I could. But still, it was not what you might call my calling. So later on, in the States at the university, because I needed to I needed, so to speak, to get some money for the university, for surviving, for tuition, for books. So I got all kinds of work. And one of them was taking care of the small planetarium at LSU, which was 30 feet, I remember. And I used to be everything. I used to be the cleaner, the janitor, the electrician, everything. I did everything.
And was it at the university, Dennis?
Yes, it was university. It was 66. No, 65 when I started there. And of course, 65. And then the next year, I continued with the little planetarium because it was a good source of income. And it wasn't what you might call very taxing on my time. And I had a supervisor, a professor at the university. His name is Ray Grinchik. He's gone now. But he was what you might call a Renaissance man. At the time, if you remember, there was no what you might call space-related popularization of science. It was very, very early on. The only one who was involved in the popularization was possibly Carl Sagan. Anyway, the guy, this professor of mine, saw what is going on for the future, and he was also in charge of the various educational activities of the department. Of course, other professors wanted me to follow, let's say, theory and observation, but I liked teaching. So he prepared for me later on something that I owe him very much. What happened was that this professor wanted me to go into education, but I was not ready. I wanted to save Greece. My first degree was in political communication. I wanted to come back to Greece and save Greece from everybody. But then in 1967, and that also caused me to run for student government president for LSU in 1966. There were three of us, and nobody in the first election, nobody got 50%. So one of the other two guys and myself got into a runoff election. Of course, there was what you might call a very antagonistic campaign, like Keep America for the Americans, things like that, which of course, I didn't mind. In any case, that gave me the idea of saving Greece. Well, the next year, there was no saving Greece because the dictatorship came on. In 1967, well, actually, today, the 21st of April, was the day that this junta took over. And of course, I thought that that was that. And because political science and political communication was not what you might call a very acceptable to the situation here, I, I decided to change. And I was lucky because that same year, the big planetarium, the Louisiana Arts and Science Center Planetarium, was being built. And we had uh, the luck that my professor was also an advisor to the planetarium.
Dennis, LSU, Louisiana State University, correct?
Yes.
And the Louisiana Science Center is, both of them are in Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
I didn't catch the last one.
Both of them are in Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
Yes, yes. Well, anyway, so they built that big planetarium. It was a 60-foot planetarium, 18 meters, one of the biggest at the time, not only in the United States, but also in the world. And all of a sudden, I was hired as an assistant to the director. But let me tell you this is an interesting story. The first director of this planetarium was a big man, I mean, really big in this business. His name was Roy K. Marshall. This guy had a national program popularizing astronomy on NBC. So he was really big in popularizing astronomy from the late 1940s, beginning 1950s. Anyway, in 1966, 67, they hired him to be the first director. The trouble is that he was drinking a little bit more, and in the South, that was not very acceptable at the time. So he more or less was asked to leave, and they went to London to get the director of the London Planetarium to come to Baton Rouge. Can you imagine? Now, why London? London, right, because of Madame Tussauds Museum, was the most popular site of planetaria in the world. So they thought that if they were going to get this guy, they would get, their money's worth. His name was Julius Stahl, Staal.
He later
He
was,
wrote, of course,
came
also
from Pittsburgh, didn't he?
the what?
He came from South Africa originally.
Yeah, originally, yes, he went to London, from London to Baton Rouge.
And he was also in Atlanta, I think.
The what?
Atlanta.
Ah, well, Julius and the director, a lady, whom, of course, I am very thankful. She hired me. And the director of the foundation, of the center, the Arts and Science Center, were not seeing eye to eye. Therefore, Julius did not last more than 6-7 months, I think, because at that time, Fairbanks opened in Atlanta. So he found a way to become the director of the Fairbanks Planetarium, and he left. So they went to a third, now in a period of less than a year, to a third director. Now this director was very up and coming. He was very famous at the time for writing excellent planetarium shows. He had the knack, so to speak. And of course, he taught me everything I know. As a matter of fact, he has come to Greece over these past few years 3 times. And the last one was maybe 2 years ago. I don't remember.
And who is that?
The what?
Who is that?
David Pettus was his name. David Pettus. Pettus. Well, David, like I said, had the fame of being up and coming. And he did come to Baton Rouge. I became his assistant. And somebody in an interview just a couple of months ago asked me, what made you realize that this was your calling? Mm-hmm. And I said, I have never heard that question before. And talking about it, I think I found the correct answer, and that was that up to a point, I was helping David. I was doing research. I may be writing a paragraph or two for the show, which of course he changed appropriately. And then all of a sudden he said, all right, you pick a theme, you pick a subject, and you write from start to bottom a new script, a show, 45 minutes long. Oh boy, I said, it was unbelievable. And yet, when I started writing, I started researching. It turned out to be that that was the point in time that I said, well, this is what I'm going to do the rest of my life. By the way, the subject matter was the end of the world.
Wonderful. So
anyway, that was the story as far as being hired in the big planetarium. At the same time, my professor has said, okay, now you have chosen popularization. So he made a really very interesting, okay, I had, my first degree. So for a graduate degree, he wanted me to do something like a popularization of science. He put in this lineup of courses, he put business communication. He put organizational behavior. He put, of course, astronomy subjects, mainly because that was his bailiwick. Mainly the stellar evolution, the evolution of stars, how they turned to become, at the end, red giants. Now, mind you, at the time, we did not know. We had discovered, there were discovered some pulsars. By the beginning, they didn't even know what the hell those were. Black holes were only in theoretical.
Exactly.
Yes, but in any case, I did quite a bit. I'm very proud to say that one of my big papers was taking evolution of stars from birth to death. With all this, I included, of course, all of these that were not proven yet, but yet they seem to me very logical. So anyway, even if you look at that paper today, you still think that it was quite something. Anyway.
So when did you become the director of the LAS.
What?
So when did Dennis? When did you become the director? Did you become the director of the LAS?
Oh, yeah. Now, that's why I always say that I am one of the luckiest persons in the world. I was the right time, with the right background, with the correct uh, knowledge. Uh, so in 1969, after the Apollo 11, my wife and I went, after the Apollo 11 mission, we went to Greece uh, because my sister was getting married, and it was time for my folks to meet my new wife, whom I am married to. Anyway, we went there, uh, and then we returned. Uh, I discovered that David decided to go off. And so the board of directors said, what the hell? We've tried our best. We got the best people, and still it didn't work out. Why don't you become the director? He said, sure. Is it more money? And they said, yes. Okay, so I went on to become the director in the fall of 1969.
Okay.
Now,
So now you're director. They had the meeting. The Cape meeting conference was in Michigan in the fall of 1970. Let's put it this way: how did you first find out that a National Planetarium Society was being formed?
well, I don't remember exactly how, but uh, there was intercommunication among planetaria, not as widely as now, of course, but still we knew what was happening.
Right.
Um, in the fall of 1970, when Cape was organized, to tell you the truth, uh, I was very hesitant at the time uh, to participate in something that was, everybody was talking about it and everybody was not doing anything. There was an organization, what they used to call the Big Man Planetarium Society. Throughout the world, it was an international. They used to call it IPD, IPD, IPDC,
Correct.
International Planetarium Directors Conference.
Started in 1958.
All right. So I said, okay, here we have this organization. Why do we need a second one? Of course, we needed the second one because most of the planetaria in the United States at the time were small planetaria, and this IPDC was not very welcoming the smaller planetarium directors or the smaller planetarians, which of course I did not like. So, but still, I thought that I shouldn't participate in something that was in direct opposition to the IPDC. Now, IPDC had done quite a few conferences around the world. The latest one was in Canada, 3 cities, I think it was, among two cities in Canada and one in the United States, New York. or something like that. It doesn't matter. Uh, the the idea is that at the beginning I wasn't very hot, and then in the spring of 1971,
Correct.
three prominent at the time, three prominent members of the profession, Eagle, Sig Weiser, and Jim Hooks. Those three were told by the Cape Conference to prepare a, some kind of uh,
A constitution or
a constitution, some kind of a constitution, in order to be discussing that in the next meeting, which was, if I remember correctly, Cupertino. But I'm not very sure. I think it was, but in any case, so they had to meet somewhere. Sig was in Canada. Paul was in Arkansas, and Jim in Carolina or somewhere there. So they went to
North Carolina.
they had to meet somewhere, and they chose to meet at the Spring American Association, the American Astronomy Society meeting, which in the spring was organized at LSU. And that's how really I got involved, because I was the local guy with LAC, and we had, the first meetings.
So where were the meetings held, Dennis?
It was it was well, there was a meeting at the planetarium. There was a meeting in at the coffee shops. We did not have a specific
Lots of places around the city.
My wife at the time was the program director of the LSU Union, student union, the LSU student union. So we did get a free room to meet if we wanted, but we preferred to meet in the coffee shop rather than in a dry room in the building. So in any case, there was now, of course, Jim will probably remember many more details. My head is not as good as it used to be.
So
Anyway, but it was at that time that we were ready to present to these guys, to the rest of the planetarians, the proposed constitution, and that happened in the next year, which was Cupertino, I think. But it was at the same time that Karen and I decided to go to Greece again. And because of that, I did not go to that conference. Ever since, of course, I didn't miss any of the conferences. In '74 in Atlanta, don't remember the lineup, but by that time, I had already left from Baton Rouge.
Right.
And I was in Greece, and
So-
that was because of the decision not to go to Cupertino but to go to Greece, and that's when I met the sister of Eugene Eugenides, who saw that I had the capability and the background to take over the Greek planetarium. Now, mind you, at the time, I was in 72, I was 29 years old. And in Greece, if you were not at least 55, 60, they wouldn't even give you the time of day. But I guess saw something that uh, other people could not see, not even myself. Of course, she did do a detailed research about me. I remember that she wrote down even girlfriends that I had that I had forgotten myself, and she knew about them, and among other things. So she did do a very uh, uh, thorough uh, uh, investigation of who I were and this and that. So she made me an offer I could not refuse. Really. I mean, she made me an offer I could not refuse. Even if I wanted to refuse, there was no way. And of course, my professor was very helpful. He said, "You are, for God's sake, you're getting to become popularizer. You don't need most of these uh, advanced astronomy courseware." And I said, okay. Now, of course, I had enough credits to get my first degree was BA, Bachelor of Arts. So I had enough credits in the meantime to get with that program that he set up for me.
So
So I did come to Greece, and that was it.
So going back, Dennis. So did you attend the, the meetings of the Constitutional Committee?
The meetings of Constitution Committee, actually, it was 2 or 3 days affair. Nothing particularly big.
Right.
Both Sig and Paul had already done preliminary proposals. So when the three of them met together, it was a well-done document.
And did
So
you
it wasn't
meet with them, Dennis? Did you meet with them
Oh yeah,
to
yeah,
help
of course.
put together the bylaws?
Well, actually, they were the ones who did everything.
You
But I
observed-
was there to say, oh yeah, that's a very good idea. Oh yes, yes, I agree with this. Um, uh, it, because of my background in political science, I had enough uh, parliamentary procedure things uh, to put my 2 cents.
So you did participate. So there
2 cents.
there
2 cents. Two
four-
cents worth.
4 people basically put it together. Paul, and Sig, and Jim, and you. Although your role, you say that your role was not major, but still you did play a role in putting the bylaws of the society together.
Well, yes. At the same time, don't forget that writing a constitution for an organization was not neither easy nor very difficult. It wasn't as easy as doing it right now with the internet and samples of this kind of documents, but at the same time, and not very difficult because there were other organizations whom we took and picked, actually. the real writing of the Constitution and bylaws happened the next year in Cupertino, when they really got down to the business of writing a document that made sense.
Mm-hmm. And so I think the first issue of the Planetarian came out in 1973, or did it come out in 1972? I have copies of it also, and I'm pretty sure, what's his name? The first president was from Texas.
Paul Engel. No. Paul Engel. In the conferences, the first conferences, that I was the I in IPS, or the I on ISPE.
Correct.
So they were not international at the time. They were only Americans. Well, they were Canadians. It's North America, really. So that was in 1978.
Right.
That two conferences after the Atlanta conference.
Right.
After the Atlanta conference, I don't remember which one was it, but in 78, I think it was in Washington, D.C. And that's when Terence Murtaugh from Armagh, Ireland, and a guy from Hamburg at the time. I don't remember his name. The three of us, a German, an Irish, and a Greek, decided that we should be part of this organization. And that's when we sat down and formed the European Mediterranean Planetarium Association.
In 1978.
78. And that's how I became representative for IPS, for the IPS Council, and the rest is history. But it was the first affiliate that was from Europe, the first affiliate from Europe, and slowly but steadily they started living, making the BUP, for example, the British Association of Planetarium.
Right.
So they left, and then the Germans left. And then slowly but steadily, it was new affiliates.
Correct.
From Europe. And
so I didn't realize that initially that your affiliate included all of Europe.
Yeah, because nobody, at the time, Dave, nobody really wanted, they really did not want to go to with an American organization.
Right. So I still wanted to explore a little bit more about the beginning of ISPE. I remember now that the first issue of the Planetarian magazine, I'm pretty sure it was July or June. It was June 1972. So in the president's message, Paul said that our organization has been officially formed now. So I believe that, the bylaws were written in March of 1971, and then they had to, ISPE, and even today, IPS is a federation. It's affiliates that agree to join IPS. So I believe that after the bylaws were written, they were sent to the different affiliates to ask them, to join, to ratify it. And then when they joined, that was the beginning, officially anyway, of ISPE. So I think that probably happened in winter of 1971. And Paul said that in the planetarium, he said the organization is, we conceived this at Cape and now we're official, is what he said. I mean, are you really official unless you have a constitution, bylaws, which are accepted by the affiliates or states who are going to be part of the federation? So I think that we perhaps could do a little more research, but John Hare, the chair of the history committee, and I pretty much believe that we can say that this is the 50th anniversary of the formation of IPS. When they named the organization, it was called the International Society of Planetarium Educators. And I read a quote, let me find it here. This was written in 1973, in the March 1973 issue. They elected new officers. So Thomas Gates wrote, "The planetariums of other continents would become part of our organization, and the exchange of approach and utilization of our medium will indeed become more diverse. We must be ready to serve as an effective organization for all planetariums around the world." Now, do you think when they first formed ISPE, whether it was 1971 or 72, they used the word international, but did they really believe they were going to go to Europe and Asia and Mexico and South America, or were they just using the word international?
Well, from the beginning, they wanted to have an organization that would be international, number one.
Okay.
Number two, because of the previous big men conference, the IPDC, they didn't want to be partial. They wanted to be all inclusive, and therefore the international was part of it. So
when you formed the organization in Europe, by that time it was called, our society was called, IPS. They changed the name in 77 or 78. They were eager to see you come in. They were very welcoming. They wanted to have.
Yeah, of course they were. Because, well, like I said, for 4 years or so, I was the eye in IPS, the international part, just one person. So, of course, they wanted more, and they wanted more, and they were very happy to hear that Terence and what was his name? Jeez, forget. Anyway, Thomas will probably know which.
It would be in some of the old directories. And he was the second president of.
Yes.
He was the third president. Paul was first, Sig was second, and Tom was the third president of IPS. So I think probably the statement he wrote about, IPSE becoming international was probably written they were going to be electing officers. And so he was running for president-elect in 1973. And so that's when he wrote that statement about ISPE becoming international. Tell us, Dennis, some I mean, as Jack just said, for quite a few years, at council meetings and at conferences, you were Europe. And so you were on the council, what, 20, 30 years?
Oh boy.
Started 1978.
Beginning 1978, and I left, I think, in 2010.
Okay. And then Manos became the rep.
And Manos, yes.
Yes. So you saw a lot of years. So what are some of the highlights or some of your memories of the council during those 30 years? Are there any particular? We don't have to talk about all the times.
I'll give you my
Do you have some
impressions.
particular highlights?
I'll give you my impressions. I think because of my background in parliamentary procedures, um, uh, people were scared of me. They didn't want to rock the boat. So a lot of times, because of that, um, they agreed so that they wouldn't go against what I would say. The thing is that because of this insistence of mine, we were able to finish things faster and much more appropriately at the end than if I had not spoken out.
So
all in all, what is I wouldn't want to bother people, but at the same time I wouldn't let go of things that were not appropriate, either for the organization or because of parliamentary procedures and stuff like that.
So in some way, you were the godfather.
Yeah, that's what
And they
Thomas.
were afraid of you.
Well, I'm not very serious about it, not afraid, but they knew that on that count, I knew what I was talking about, and they wouldn't want to be against what I was saying.
And you kept things moving, and you kept, things, since you knew a lot about parliamentary procedure, you kept things on the up and up because of your knowledge.
Because of the history. I knew what was happening back in the 1970s, back in the 1980s, even 1990s. So people were listening.
We can go on talking, I know, for quite a while, but there's just a couple more questions I wanted to ask about IPS, and then we can talk about other things. The membership committee now is trying to increase the number of members that belong to our society. So I want to ask you, what message would you give to new planetarium people, professional planetarians, to answer the question, why should they join IPS? What value is there to joining the IPS, our society?
Well, it's simple. It's experience. They can take advantage of the experience of hundreds of people who have gone through the same process, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel, so to speak. It's easier to find out how in the hell somebody else has done the same thing. I remember the first few conferences during the paper sessions. Every year we had one or two people come up and describe how to make codolith slides. I mean, uh, so you can see that a lot of people thought that they invented the wheel, so to speak. Uh, uh, so I think a new planetarium person will it will behoove him or her to actually uh, learn from the experience of all the others who are members. Uh, for example, reading the magazine is a, a treasure trove, actually, of ideas and things, how other people are doing things.
Right.
Right. So I think if for no other reason, for the experience, and of course, when I say the experience, I mean also that you'll have uh, not only the experience of people, but also uh, the ideas that come from all these years of experience they have.
And perhaps the perspective of not just looking at the field from your own area of the world, but being able to experience the viewpoint of people from Greece or Tokyo or wherever in the world.
Yeah, but can you imagine a small planetarium, a school planetarium in Arkansas? Where would they have the opportunity to get uh, ideas from all over the world?
Right.
Which of course might not be helpful at the beginning, but some of them can go on to various other uh, avenues that you wouldn't think before.
And one never knows when you might think, well, I'm at a small planetarium in Arkansas, and suddenly you have an exchange student that comes from Greece, and you can ask them if they've been to the planetarium in Athens or other places, so you can relate more to people from other cultures or countries coming to even a small city. We often have people from other countries who come and live in the city. So, and you meet new people. Dennis, when you were at the conference in Baton Rouge in 2012, did you get to meet Jacob and Jane from Ghana? And the energy that they bring, they're new, they bring energy, they have all kinds of ideas. And another person who's recently made quite a splash in IPS is Susan Mirabana Owen from Owen. It is Owen from Kenya. And to bring these people in from many parts of the world, they add energy, they add excitement, they add perspectives of people from many cultures and countries. And that's not something that you're going to get, if you're in a small planetarium in Arkansas, you're not going to get it any other way except, being a part of IPS. So, Dennis, as we can still talk about, I have some other questions I can ask you, but to finish up our discussion of the International Planetarium Society, from your perspective, being there from the very beginning, I mean, there in Baton Rouge, do you have any closing remarks, or what do you think about the future of our society? Do you have any thoughts on that? I mean, it's hard to make predictions, of course.
it's impossible to make predictions, but in any case, I can say this, that back in the 1970s, actually was back in 1969, was 1969, in the fall of 1969, we were invited, I think it was, probably it was the IPDC, the big planet, the big dome.
Right.
People. And I remember Tony Senzano, who was the director of the Moorhead Planetarium, where the astronauts were being actually dedicated to learn the sky under the dome. And Tony said that the future of the planetarium is the lasers. And it was, at the time, lasers were nothing. I mean, there was not even, we're talking about 69, for God's sake.
Right.
And yet he was talking about the future, meaning that the lasers will produce the star field.
Correct.
So he was not exactly correct, but now look what is happening with this ENS dome, or with the laser projector before that.
Correct.
The laser projector. So a lot of people might not be able to predict things, but they can offer some ideas that are really that can go on to the reality of today. And I know that the planetarium as a dome will be there. It's an experience. The experience will not go away. And I hope that the people who are excited about this medium will continue finding new things to give to the people that to their audience.
Mm-hmm. What did I read in that article you posted a few weeks ago? That you wrote over 30 books, is it, on astronomy?
33, yeah, 33.
33. Wow. And I wanted to ask you, they said, one of the quotes they gave, they said that you are the principal proponent of astronomy in Greece, the man who put astronomy into Greek homes.
Well, it's a little exaggeration, I think, but yeah, I was from the beginning, from the moment I stepped on the Greek soil, I was in favor of popularization of science, because that was, my bailiwick from the start. And I guess a lot of people did not think that it was a very nice thing to do, to popularize science. It was more or less having people think that they can understand. And of course, I believe that people can understand the universe.
Of course.
The same as professional people. As long as you give the information in such a way as to be palatable, acceptable. And because of that, that's what I have done the last 50 years or so.
I did many shows for, preschoolers 3 or 4 years old, and they can understand astronomy at a certain level. You put it in their language. So,
Exactly.
why not have science popularized and have educated citizens? I heard a very interesting scientist. I think she's a cosmologist. Was on the local public radio station, and she's a she's one of the few black cosmologists in the whole world. I mean, that has a PhD, and she wrote a book, and in the description of the book, it says this. She begins with the belief that we all have the fundamental right to know and love the night sky. It's like our right as human beings to understand the universe and to go together on the excitement of the exploration of space. I mean, look how many people are tuning in to helicopter on Mars and all these things that excite and inspire people. Not everyone will become a scientist, but many will. So it's a right for us to be able to understand a certain amount about the universe. So I don't understand why people want to keep it secret or not. You can't comprehend it unless you're a PhD here. I also was interested, Dennis. I wrote down some things about, in the article. That article, it was really a good article. And you talked some about science fiction. What role has science fiction played in your life?
Well, yeah, that was a very good question because not too many people ask you about it. But he knew that I was involved in uh, uh, publishing back in the mid 70s, publishing a magazine about science and science fiction, half popularizing of science and half science fiction. And because he knew that, uh, obviously he tried to connect it. And that was true because science fiction was the beginning of my interest in astronomy. The question, what if? That's the question you ask. What if such and such would happen? What will be next? And that's a very interesting approach, uh, this what if.
And so many things today. I mean, if you look at the science fiction from decades ago, you see things like, iPads and cell phones and all kinds of inventions that we now use in our everyday life.
Yeah.
And, they were written about in science fiction decades ago. I noticed, Dennis, that are you still okay with going on a little bit longer?
Oh yeah, yeah, sure.
Okay. You know, if you're tired, let me know. And we
Don't
don't
worry
need,
about it. I'll tell you.
um, but another thing in the article that fascinated me was you said something about that you're a storyteller for adults. Uh, why is storytelling so important, even for adults?
It's, you know, everything is fine, but if you're able to make uh, hard facts, hard science into a storytelling situation, then there is no problem of understanding. Your audience does not have a problem of understanding what you're talking about. So I have been all my life a storyteller.
Mhm. Yeah, very. I mean, children like stories, adults like stories too. A few years ago, where they actually had part of the conference, they spent quite a bit of time on storytelling. They brought people in and they did a storytelling workshop. Not planetarium people did this workshop, but they have a storytelling school there in Tennessee, and they came and were teaching us how to do storytelling. And so storytelling is so very, very important. Another question, Dennis. No matter where one goes, you find that astronomy and space uh, really attract people. Why do you think people are so attracted to astronomy and space?
It's the future. People realize that that's where our future lies, number one. Number two, we have nice pictures from all these activities, and they are very impressive, especially nowadays. To tell you the truth, I'll tell you a story.
Mhm.
When the Pillars of Creation came out the first time,
Mhm.
you remember that?
Mhm.
And CNN showed the picture um, on our television uh, screen. My wife said that, you know, this is a gorgeous photograph. And I, who should know better, I said, that's not a photograph. This is an artist rendition of the photograph. And it was actually the actual photograph. So even I uh, was very uh, uh, taken up.
Yes. Kind of in conclusion, and I know you still have, we I hope you have many, many years yet, of accomplishments. But at this point, um, what do you consider your greatest accomplishment uh, in the planetarium astronomy field, and what uh, what would you like your legacy to be?
Well, actually, to tell you the truth, when I was doing all the things that I have been doing, I wasn't thinking of a legacy.
Of course.
But um, there was a question that was posed to me by another interviewer who said, of all the awards, quote unquote, that you have gotten over the years, which ones do you think it's your um, biggest accomplishment? I said, the people who listen to me, especially the younger people
Mhm.
who were inspired by what I have been doing and
Mhm.
became researchers, professors in various universities uh, uh, and research centers around the world. They are my best accomplishment and my best award. Eh, So, yeah, that's, I think, those people, because, whatever I might have done and do in stellar um, development, it wouldn't be even a small part of what all these people together have done for science. So that's my Nobel Prize.
Wonderful. I agree completely. When I started working in a planetarium when I was in college, I decided to become a teacher. And for exactly the same reason you're talking about, that you can pass it on to other people and inspire them. And it gave me great joy, even as a, high school science teacher to do that. So that's just a wonderful thing to remember, and your greatest accomplishment. I like that.
Well, we're hoping to open again in the fall. I don't think earlier than that. Because anyway, the summer is always have been a dead place for us. People don't get inside the building during the summer. They prefer the beaches. So actually, we are not expecting to open full force until the fall of 2021. And the funny thing is too that I am writing my last hurrah type of show. I wrote the first show in the digital planetarium was called Cosmic Odyssey, and so I'm doing a Cosmic Odyssey 2. We're not going to call it Cosmic Odyssey 2, but it will be my last presentation in the planetarium, and it is going to be quite different than the first one back in 2003. So really, I'm hoping to have that ready by the time when the international organization, the COSPAR, if you have heard, the Committee of Space Research, which will be meeting in Athens in July of 2022.
Oh, great.
Hopefully, we will have something like 4,000 people attending, and that will be also the time for us to rejuvenate, our various machines and computers and projectors and all these things. It will be a new planetarium.
So, Dennis, I saw one last comment I have written down on the sheet here. These are notes I took from that article. You say, I do not believe in luck, but I feel very lucky that I have made the hobby a profession. So you're a lucky man.
Yes, I think so. I think I was lucky in going to the United States. I was lucky in going to LSU. That gave me an education that was not just acceptable, but an education that made a lifelong hobby into a profession, where I have still friends from those days, lifelong friends, that gave me a partner of 53 plus years who followed me in Greece, which is quite a decision. She had really a great future in the university activities, a great future throughout the United States, not just at LSU. She was up and coming, and yet she gave those things up and followed me in Greece.
Wonderful.
So I'm very grateful, and I'm lucky because of all of these things. I was in the right position, with the right background, with the right ideas, and I met the right people to make me an offer I could not refuse.
And also, Dennis, you mentioned way back when you were at LSU, you wanted to come back to Greece and change the country politically. Well, you came back to Greece and changed the country because of your popularization of astronomy.
Yeah, because I do think that you can offer your country things not only in politics, but in other niches that you choose to perform. And I decided in the early 1980s that politics was nice, but I would stick with the popularization of science, which was much more approachable to people.
So you've been a pioneer, Dennis.
Thank you.